Hey, it's Drybear. And with the patch that we saw yesterday, some major changes were implemented around the Nightmare Dungeon system, as well as the amount of experience that you can get in your endgame activities. And while I'm still testing all the specific dungeons and optimizations around the best routes and then strategies, today I want to talk about all the findings that we as a community have collected around these new changes and what you should know about what's available in the game now. Because if you're looking to level an alt or get your character to 100, the next week or two is probably going to be one of the best times to do so. But first, you should come hang out with me on my live stream. I'm live every single day on twitch.tv/Drybear. If you don't come hang out with me and the community, the next time you order Cajun fries at the restaurant that you're at, the seasoning is all going to be gathered at the bottom and half your fries are not going to be covered. There's going to be enough seasoning where you can actually shake it up and get it all over the fries, but initially you'll be disappointed because it won't be all over the fries the way you like. A quick review of what went on if you didn't see my patch video or you didn't see the notes that went live. They increased the experience awarded for completing Nightmare Dungeons. This is the bonus that you get when the pedestal appears and the dungeon is considered complete. They've also significantly increased the experience gained from killing monsters in Nightmare Dungeons. These two changes together made Nightmare Dungeons a lot more viable for XP gain in general. Helltide chests now provide more bonus XP when opened. It's still not stellar, but it is more than it was, which is pretty cool. And significantly increased rewarded experience from completing individual whispers across the board. This one also isn't crazy enough to be warranted. The big wins here are the Nightmare Dungeon changes. On top of that, they also added in the bonus where you can teleport to a Nightmare Dungeon directly through the map once it becomes active. So if we jump in game and we go across the map, we can see that there's dungeons everywhere. And when I hover over one of these dungeons, I can't do anything with it. I can map a waypoint to it and I can go walk to it just like we used to do with Nightmare Dungeons before. However, if we do have these, let's see a bad one I'm going to disenchant anyways. Let's get one of these here. So when I activate this and I open the map, you can see now at the bottom of this tooltip, if I left click this, this will teleport me to the dungeon. Only when Nightmare Dungeons are active can you do this, but you can click this and say travel to Black Asylum. Yes, it'll do a portal and it'll teleport you there. It'll teleport you right out front of the dungeon, and this saves significant amounts of time. It means you can spend less time filtering your sigils for dungeons that are close to waypoints, things like Sunken Ruins, which is very far away from waypoints, Feral Den, which is also really far away. Look at like the Vigil and then the Den here is like, this is the closest waypoint here. Sunken Ruins in the top is even worse, right? You've got this one here. These are the two closest waypoints. You can actually just have the dungeon and not even have a waypoint on screen. It's so far away. This is super awesome and gives us a lot of options for leveling. But there's also some new discoveries that I'll share with you today that make this even faster. Now, my Necromancer is level 96. I've spent a lot of time just theory crafting, taking my gear off, testing stats, and doing Nightmare Dungeons exclusively. I have basically all of the glyphs at level 15, that's the activity I've been doing the most. So if this change had been in sooner, we would be well past 100. We'd be at 100 for a long time at this point. So this is super cool. So there's definitely a lot of benefits now to doing Nightmare Dungeons, and I think for Season 1, I'll do some more testing, but it's possible that you'll want to rush to maybe 42 or 43, unlock World Tier 3, and start doing Nightmare Dungeons, and then that would be the fastest way to go from 43 all the way up to 100, is just pumping Nightmare Dungeons. There's actually even more benefit to getting higher difficulty, because not only do you get the XP bonus for doing dungeons above 3 levels higher than you get the XP bonus, but on top of that, the bonus that you get for completing the dungeon is so high now that as you go higher in difficulty, that bonus gets higher. You get more XP for your glyphs. So there's tons of benefits for doing that. Now, with this new system of completing the dungeon, the whole dungeon makes a big difference now. So some dungeons, which previously were really good, Prison of Chaldeum, which has a very high density in the first half of the dungeon and a relatively medium to low density in the second half of the dungeon, becomes a little less viable for XP gain, but still pretty decent if you're able to clear the second half quite quickly. So if you have high movement speed, that sort of thing. But these are the dungeons that I recommend in the current patch for Nightmare Dungeons. If you get any of these with a Nightmare Sigil that has good affixes and you want to run it really quickly, all of these are really good. Champion's Demise rocketed back up to the top again, just because the elite density and the mob density is so high. The Nightmare Dungeon for Nightmare mobs in the dungeon going up, combined with the completion bonus, makes this really nice. Again, you do still want to finish the Nightmare Dungeon for most of these. Blind Burrows is still one of the best. These two are still the best in the game right now, but these other options are great for you as well. Renegade's Retreat is great. Sunken Ruins was always good. It was just so freaking far away from anything that you would lose you'd lose basically almost a whole dungeon length, or half a dungeon length just getting there and then leaving. So it ended up being pretty bad, but it's actually pretty good if you can teleport directly to it. Ancient's Lament is great, and then Core Dragon is also great. There's a weird transition in the middle where you need good movement speed to get good value out of it, but the density overall is very good. So if you're looking for priority dungeons, this is what I'd recommend right now without further, much more in-depth testing on how these function, but these are all very good dungeons to run on Nightmare Sigil keys. Now, there's also a discovery that has been made that I am willing to bet is going to get nerfed very soon or fixed. This one is very iffy for me, and I want to give it to you just because we're reporting and we're showing what's going on to make sure I don't die to this, but there is a way to infinitely do a Nightmare Sigil currently without any patches. So just so you know, use this at your own risk, but this is something that you can heavily optimize your XP, and it's how some people are getting ridiculous amounts of XP per hour by doing this trick. And the trick is you activate a Nightmare Sigil like I have just done. You go into the Nightmare Dungeon. You can't do this alone. You have to be in a group, as always. So you're in a group, and you do the old dungeon leveling strategy, which is you do a dungeon that splits out, and you go in different directions. You share XP across an instance, so you can go as far away as you want in the instance. Everyone gets shared XP, so you can clear the whole dungeon, get to the finish, and before you finish the dungeon, what you do is in a group, you have the leader pass lead to somebody else. The person who activated the key will pass the party lead to another person in the party, and then they will decline to stay in that instance, and it will boot them out from the party. However, since it was their sigil, when they get booted out of the party and they go back to the entrance, their sigil is still active and it gets reset. So then the 2 people or 3 people that are still in the previous instance can leave that instance and rejoin on the original leader, who now has a fresh sigil that is the same sigil with the same affixes in the same dungeon with all the mobs respawned, and you can just keep running that over and over. And right now there are plenty of people that are getting ridiculous amounts of XP doing Blind Burrows or Champion's Demise or Sunken Ruins over and over and over and over and over and over in a group and resetting it that way. Again, I don't really recommend this. It's probably going to get changed soon, but just so everyone's aware, it's going around. You can use that if you like. Another trick that you can use that is perfectly safe, and I've been using the whole time for Nightmare Dungeons, is that when you're inside of a Nightmare Dungeon, you can activate another key, and it will take you out of the dungeon and activate that dungeon at the same time. So you can just teleport out using the key. So when I'm at the sigil pedestal, I just activate a new key, it boots me out, and then when I zone out, the new dungeon is already ready to go, and you can click, travel to it, teleport to the new dungeon, go in, do the dungeon, use the key inside, teleport out, go to the next one, and you can just keep stringing these together, and this is far superior, I think, than just resetting the dungeon, because you get the XP for your glyphs, you're right back into the new dungeon for more XP grind and all that, and you're also completing the keys, which is also very good and gives you bonuses that you would receive at the end of the dungeon on top of that. So very cool, very fast, very easy. And if things stay the way they are for Season 1, it's looking like we will want to rush to World Tier 3 and start pumping Nightmare Dungeons back to back to back. Because not only is that now going to be very viable experience, but it will also be leveling our glyphs, which is super important. And that's all I got for you today. If you found value in the video, leave a like down below, leave a comment for the algorithm so more people see this video, and I will see you on my live stream. If you enjoyed yourself today, leave a like down below. You can support me and my work on Patreon and view Patreon exclusive content, link in the description. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.